Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the third in a series of webinars on cannabis business operations provided by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation. I am Natalie Darvis, the Dean of Faculty of Oaksterdam University, and I will be your moderator this evening. This webinar, amongst other educational sessions, is the official launch of the Business, Licensing, and Compliance Assistance Program for social equity applicants in the great city of LA. The goal of this program is to help applicants obtain a commercial cannabis license, as well as operate a successful cannabis business. Tonight's webinar will be part one of a two-part series on branding and marketing for cannabis businesses. Now, before we get started, let's review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed after the editing process, likely in a few weeks, on DCR's website. You will be muted with camera off for the duration of the webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. You will be able to see and hear all the panelists. Virtual hand raising has been turned off. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on tonight's topic, branding and marketing. We would love for you to ask questions about tonight's subject matter in the Q&A box. This box is located in the bottom pane of your Zoom screen. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we're going to have a robust Q&A session where you will also get responses to these questions in the last 45 minutes of tonight's event. The chat box is available for your interaction with other participants. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our panelists for tonight's Cannabis Branding and Marketing webinar, Tiffany Watkins. Tiffany Watkins is well known as Lady Canna. Tiffany's grassroots campaigning and advocacy go back over 30 years. Tiffany has been heavily involved in patient representation, harm reduction, public policy, and community organizing in the cannabis sector. Tiffany is the founder and CEO of Vanguard Media Online, a media platform and magazine that is dedicated to women in cannabis. Vanguard showcases the efforts, innovation, and creativity of all women. In addition to these pursuits, Tiffany sits on many boards and committees where she helps craft changes in cannabis policy, public health, and social justice. She is also a faculty member of Oaksterdam University. Good evening, Tiffany.
Good evening. Thank you.
It's so lovely to have you here this evening. We are so excited for tonight's presentation, part one on branding and marketing. I've been telling everybody this is going to be a really awesome webinar. So we're ready for your presentation when you are.
Awesome. Well, then let's get started. All right, let's get this going. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to share some valuable information with you on branding, marketing, and advertising in the cannabis space. Such important info. One second, let me just get to the proper screen. Apologies here. There we go. All right, sorry for that delay. So in this webinar tonight, we are going to be talking about the differences between the three headings, branding, marketing, and advertising. We're going to go over some federal versus state rules, and then we're going to dive a little deeper into the advertising and packaging rules for the state of California. We're also going to talk about some specific rules for Los Angeles for advertising and signage, and then we're going to finish up with social media terms of use. So, like I said, we're going to be defining branding, marketing, and advertising, and the importance of having a strong brand in the cannabis space. This is a unique industry, and having a strong brand can make or break you. So we're really going to go over that. And we're going to talk about the restrictions on cannabis and when it comes to advertising and marketing your brand.
Tiffany, we're loving this info. I don't think that your slides are shifting, just giving you an FYI.
They're not, oh, okay. Apologies, folks. Natalie, tell me what you see on the screen here.
branding, marketing, and advertising for cannabis.
Okay, and now I'm going to transition to the next one. You should be seeing what's the difference.
No, we do not.
Okay, give me 1 second to refresh.
No problem. While you're doing that, we would love to welcome everybody tonight. See lots of awesome chat happening. Let's all give a big welcome hello in the chat box to Tiffany while she's sorting this out.
I also want to encourage any questions that you've had about your branding and marketing. We want to keep it general, not too specific, but put those questions in the Q&A, and then we will make sure that Tiffany answers them at the end. And we see your slide, Tiffany.
Okay, are we seeing slides now?
What's the difference is live on screen.
Perfect, thank you. And again, I apologize for that delay. Don't know what happened there. So what is the difference between branding, marketing, and advertising? Well, branding is creating the identity for your business. That's going to be more than just a logo. That's going to be the colors that you use, any characters, the positioning of your logo in any print or digital marketing efforts. This tells the story of who you are through your brand. Now, marketing is the process and the activities that you use to connect with your target audiences. So when you create a flyer and then you post it somewhere, you're in the activity of marketing. Now, advertising would be your paid communication. So ad spots on radio or maybe a podcast or something like that, or perhaps you've paid for a 1 page or a half a page ad in a local publication. Now, that connects you with a broader audience. There is a small caveat. With a broad audience, you're not really reaching your target. So you're putting your information out there to the masses in a large percentage that may or may not be interested in your product or service. So branding, why do you need a strong brand in cannabis? This is hyper important. The cannabis industry is an industry where we're all engaged in the same activity for a plant, and the competition is fierce. You need to be able to set yourself apart from the other retail dispensaries or other manufacturers, or you're going to fall just right into the shadows. So take note of the fierce competition. Also in this industry, we have passionate consumers. We have to remember, before cannabis was an industry, it was a community. And in that community, people had very strong and passionate feelings in regards to efficacy or patient awareness, or many of those things that they would advocate for. They've brought that right into your stores when they're shopping with you for your products and your services. So keep in mind that your consumer may have an idea as to how they think your business should run or how the regulation should be. You can really craft a message that lets them know you're on their side and that you understand these and plan to do something with your brand in order to, really bring that to light and help them to feel comfortable in your environment. There's also a wide variation of consumer preferences. And by that, I mean, consumers, there's no real true demographic for the consumer when it comes to cannabis. Many different walks of life engage in cannabis usage. But some will be focused on terpenes, some will be focused on potency. With that wide variation, it's very hard to target. You have to just dial into your niche and stick with it. Become a subject matter expert there so you can serve the target population you're looking for. So let's go into some of these laws we were mentioning earlier. There's going to be federal laws. As we know, cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. So there are some marketing and advertising restrictions that we still have to go by their guidelines for other products and services. State and local laws, which we will unpack, and the terms of use for social media platforms to stay compliant. Apologies, I just want to check in and make sure everyone is still seeing the screen. Natalie, can you verify?
You are doing great. We see federal rules. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Appreciate it. So like I said, cannabis is still illegal at the federal level, but it's technically not under federal jurisdiction. So what do we do with that? What we do is we stay compliant to what we know to be the rules and regulations federally for other products and services. We definitely want to stay within federal compliance. And when it comes to your state rules, they're similar. So you're going to really tie in what you're doing state to state or for the state of California with the over the land law of the federal guidelines. One sec. And that guideline is going to be a part of the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act and the endorsements and testimonials and advertising, which simply means that your health claims must be backed by science. And so to further go into that, you don't want to be making claims that you don't have any way to substantiate them. So some of these state laws. For this section, we are going to talk a bit about the Business and Professions Code, Division 10, and that is Chapter 15, Advertising and Marketing Restrictions for the state of California. Now, its language does state that no marketing can be intended to encourage people under the age of 21 to consume cannabis. So we also want to make sure that our marketing efforts are not attractive to children. And that statement I always find a little bit, ambiguous. What do we mean? What anything can be attractive to a child? So I think what we really need to focus on is colors and characters that may resemble something that a child may encounter in their day-to-day activity that would make it more attractive to them. We want to make sure that we're following that guideline. And it's fine to check in with your local, the city, or with the Bureau of Cannabis Control in order to find out if your marketing efforts are using things that could be deemed attractive to those who are under the age of 21. And part of not being attractive to children is having no signs near schools, daycares, youth centers, or any organization that serves children. And you want to keep yourself your marketing efforts about 1,000 feet away. It's also a state law that advertising and marketing communications contain your license number. And you've probably already seen this in many different marketing efforts, from larger named marketplaces that we go to online to see where the local dispensary is, or to something you've seen on someone's website or social media, just their license number, just to stay in compliance with the state of California. Any claims that you do make for your products or service need to be truthful and substantiated. You cannot mislead people. So if you want to say things like you have a product and you believe that it helps with migraines, you don't really have a way to substantiate that claim. So you might want to reword that to something that's a little more generalized. This can help with your maybe overall wellness. There's nothing wrong with trying to reach homeostasis. And we also have to remember, this top one is the one we really love in the cannabis space, but no product giveaways. So that does include your buy one, get one. And any, if you're having something in store, a vendor day or a demo, and a vendor would like to give something away, that is unlawful. So do not allow them to do that. This does definitely include your cannabis products, but also cannabis accessories, branded or not. You cannot give those away as part of a purchase or to encourage purchase or in your store free of charge. This, however, does not apply to the donation of cannabis to patients in need. And I'd like to be clear here and have you understand that giving to patients just directly could put you in a gray area of compliance. So always check in with your local bureau and definitely talk to organizations that are already servicing patients in the way of donations to help you craft a plan. So we're going to look at the California Cannabis Regulatory Code, Title 16, Division 42, posting and advertising. And we're also going to cover enforcement in the realm of attire and conduct for entertainers in your store and your employees. So for posting and advertising, you must confirm the age of your recipients for direct and individualized communication. So we've all seen age gates on websites. We see you go into a dispensary, you're asked for your ID. Well, what this is saying is that we really need to take it a step further and understand the market in which we're targeting when we're advertising, to make sure that when we're talking to people over the phone, face to face, or they're visiting our landing page or whatever, that we are making sure that we're doing our best to know that they're 21 years of age or older. Further, you need to have reliable, up-to-date audience composition data. This data needs to state that 71.6% of your audience must be 21 or over. So that's a real lot to remember and say, but if the Department of Cannabis Control asks you for this information based on an ad that you've put out, you will need to cite the source in which you've gotten this data or prove that you have this data. And during the time of this audit, you have to pull all advertisements that have sparked the audit to happen to begin with. So this data has to be captured from a source that's not a part of the census, not a part of the, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word, one second. Right, so yeah, not a part of the census data. You must go to a third party or an additional source. You can find sources for that at your local jurisdiction, the city, or through the Bureau of Cannabis Control. So another portion of advertising placements is that you cannot depict minors. And so while it's not likely, it still bears covering, because if you're showing a family and you want to say this is a lifestyle and you want to kind of put that forth in your advertising or in a campaign that you're using for social media or some other print, you want to make sure that you're not depicting minors. That is unlawful. You can't use any images, like we spoke of before, that may be appealing to minors. So again, watch the color schemes and the character usage. Using cartoon characters might not be the best way to make an ad that says family. You might have to convey that in a different way, because that is likely to be appealing to minors. And again, you don't want to boast in your ad about a free product or a contest that can lead to someone obtaining one of your products or another product in your store for free. That's just the same as a giveaway. Now, your outdoor signs. Signage must be affixed to a building or permanent structure. So what that means is it needs to be attached to your building or on something that is not a temporary structure. And so maybe in your parking lot, there's one of those big poles and atop it is a space that's lighted for you to put your sign, and that's never going anywhere. It's been there 100 years. Perfect to put your sign on. But something that has been erected for maybe just a few weeks while something else is going on, that would not be okay for you to place your sign. You need to be aware of that. And you need to comply with other state and local rules that are included in the Outdoor Advertising Act. So let's talk some branded merchandise. This is always fun. It's wonderful to always put your brand on a hat or maybe glasses or notepads. So you see here is a list of things that you are allowed to put your name on and sell. Anything not listed here and things that you may be thinking, can I brand that? You need written approval from the BCC for the other items. And it's just, I would suggest sending an email over or making a call so you would know directly if it's okay for you to put it, say on, maybe there's a pair of glasses, you want to put your logo down the side. You want to make sure, even though it's just a pair of glasses, that you are in compliance. So make sure that you always reach out to get that information, because branding is everything. So let's talk a little bit about code enforcement for your entertainers and your employees. Their attire matters. So obviously we know no nudity on the premises. and your attire must not expose anything below the areola or in the genital area. And absolutely no entertainment of a sexual nature. And this will apply not only to you and your staff, but any entertainers. Say you're doing a show, maybe you have local entertainers coming in. You want to make sure that they're within those guidelines. And further, you want to make sure that your patrons, those who come and visit your store during those times of maybe there's someone there doing entertainment or any other time, that they are adhering to the policy that you must be covered and not do anything that would be deemed sexual on premises. So now let's get into some of the packaging rules for the state of California. In this portion, we're going to cover packaging requirements, label requirements, and misbranded products. We're going to define what that means and how we can avoid it. Apologies, I've lost my screen for a second there. So in packaging, we're going to cover the California Law, Business and Professional Code, Division 10, Chapter 12, Packaging and Labeling. We're going to go through a little bit of that language. One second. Sorry, everyone. I just lost all screens.
We have your slides ready for backup if you need them, Tiffany.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I've got them here. Verification that we see my packaging checklist.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Sorry for all these technical hiccups. That is amazingly awkward and not helpful. But let's move on to the packaging checklist. What's needed for all your products is resealable, tamper-evident, child-resistant packaging. And that packaging needs to not be attractive to children. We can't say that enough. It needs to depict a clear and visible warning label and labeled with the unique identifier and product information for metric. And that product information will be manufacturing date or packaging date and things like that, that will allow it so that it can be brought up in the metric system. Here we go. So again, the packaging labeling will need to have the source, the date of cultivation for flower product, type of cannabis or cannabis product, that date of manufacturing that we were talking about, active ingredients and their percentages. And also you want to make sure that you are putting the milligrams per serving and the serving per package and that unique identifier number. All right, so specific labels. For flour, dried flour product, you need the net weight. Edibles, you need to make sure that there's an allergen warning. So you want to talk about wheat, eggs, fish, or dairy if that's present in that edible. And you want to remember not to use brand name ingredients. So let's say you sell a marshmallow treat. We know what those are. When you're talking about the ingredients, what you want to do is avoid that name brand product and zero in on calling it something more generic, like a puffed rice cereal. Now for vape cartridges, all cartridges inside of the packaging, so this is separate from the labeling on the packaging, the cartridge itself must bear the California universal symbol that we see here. So let's cover these misbranded products that I spoke of earlier. A product is misbranded if it was ever in an unlicensed facility. So what that really is referencing is that it's not been tracked from seed to sale. If there's a gap somewhere where it can't be traced in metric, then that product is misbranded and is unlawful for you to have that on your shelves. Do try to avoid having those products or coming in contact with those products. It challenges your licensure. And you want to make sure that your packaging doesn't bear false or misleading label information. So that can be anything from the wrong milligrams by accident, transposition of a number, messed up the date, anything like that can be misleading. So you want to make sure that you check and double check, because it is illegal for you to buy those products for your store and to sell them to your consumers. Now, it is definitely unlawful to sell your cannabis goods as an alcohol product. So selling your cannabis product, and if it's labeled with any term that might create an impression that it is an alcohol beverage or something that contains alcohol, would be unlawful. Now, this is not a common thing that I've come across, but if you've accidentally used verbiage that leads someone to believe that there's alcohol in your product, you need to definitely change that. So let's go over some local advertising rules. We're going to cover Chapter 10 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code, Article 6, advertising of cannabis and cannabis-related products. Let's begin with signage. There will be no off-site signs within 700 feet of a school, daycare, public park or library, recovery or treatment facility, or permanent supportive housing. So we did speak a little bit about this earlier when talking about the state guidelines for being near organizations that service school children, being within 1,000 feet. Well, in LA, 700 feet of a school or daycare or park or place where, library or place where people, go for community service, or recovery or treatment facilities where people are getting help for the treatment of the recovery of other, coming off of other drugs. You want to make sure that you are doing your due diligence when you are hanging signs, flyers, advertising in a publication that maybe drops their publication nearby. You want to just make sure that you're aware of what's in the area of your store and in the area of your target consumer. Also, there's only one on-site sign per street frontage. So obviously that means in front of your store, but what if you're on a corner? So if you're on the corner of Street A and Street B, you may have one sign facing outward per each side. Now, this can include your business name, your logo, your address, and contact info, but you cannot advertise any of the items inside of your store. This is just for people to see your name and know when you're in operation. Now, your signs can't be too flashy. 3D digital displays, none of those spinning signs on a pole or marquee lights, just something that's very low key, but definitely says you're there and shows when you're in operation, your hours and your name, and of course your logo. No temporary portable or sandwich signs. We've all seen those A-frames used for other businesses and in other industries, but you may not have those out at the street, on the sidewalk, or anywhere else. So let's just go over all those points again. Just a little checklist for you. One outside sign per street frontage, and that's every side that faces a street. Stick to your basic business info. Don't try to advertise on it. Make it simple. No moving parts or flashing lights, no roof signs, nothing in the street, nothing on the sidewalk. So let's get into some social media terms of use. Here we go. Just a second. Apologies there. Here we are. So social media terms of usage. In this section, we're going to go over social media do's and don'ts, rules specific to the platforms we use out there, how to craft your bio, posting compliant content, and keeping your followers. All right, first things first. On social media, all formats, all platforms, selling is not allowed. You can't post that you have a deal, a special today. That is just content that is definitely not compliant. However, educational and advocacy content is allowed. Teach your audience. And remember, no depiction of consumption of cannabis in any form. We've seen those. It looks great. We want to post the biggest cloud, but it really can get your account shut down. That is not compliant to show usage of what is deemed an illegal substance in action on any of these formats. Let's talk about Facebook for a minute. Here's their verbiage in their policies for their terms of use for drug and drug-related products. Ads must not promote the sale or use of illegal prescription or recreational drugs. And you'll see here on the left, there is a person using a bong. And you can see the smoke, and that definitely would not be compliant. And here on the right, it's been posted here that here's some raw cannabis product. Even though it looks like medicine, even though it's in medicine containers, this is still not compliant. And no content that attempts to buy, sell, trade, donate, gift, or solicit cannabis is lawful on this format. Instagram, owned by Facebook, has similar rules. Now, they take it a step further by not allowing you to have your dispensary contact information in your bio. So using the contact tab or the contact us tab is difficult. When you're crafting your bio, you need to make sure that you're not sending people to your store. And I say store because you might on Instagram want to avoid using the word dispensary when you're crafting your bio as well. And then there's Twitter. Now, this is an excerpt from the terms of use on Twitter. You may not use our service for any unlawful purpose or in furtherance of illegal activities. This includes selling, buying, or facilitating transactions in illegal goods or services, as well as certain types of regulated goods or services. So they're telling you right there, they're not going to accept pictures of product, pictures of people consuming. They're not going to want pictures of your store and information like that. So what you really want to, and Twitter is excellent for, is spreading your message. So we talked about branding in the beginning. You want to make sure that your identity is executed through these formats. Twitter is wonderful for reaching your audience with advocacy and education about who you are and what you stand for. Now let's get into crafting your bio. This is very important, again, for spreading your message of who you are and talking to your target customer profiles. You want to keep your bio information general. Definitely no cannabis terms. So again, you want to start using my store. You don't want to put where your location is, but you can be vague and talk about maybe the environment. Is the area you're in, does it have a historic name? Nearby park? Or something like that, where your consumers will know where you're talking about, but you're not using cross streets and things like that. You also want to link to your website, but here you want to be strategic. You definitely want to link to your about page or a landing page for something else that can redirect them to your menu. Never link your website on a social media platform that links directly to your menu, because that is trying to sell and your account will be banned or shut down. Definitely state in no uncertain terms that the content is only for users who are 21 years of age or older. You want to make sure that's at the top. So let's move on to content. You've got your great bio, you're talking about yourself, good pictures. Now, what do you post? Never post prices or images of people consuming cannabis. Like we saw on that mock Facebook post, there's a guy there, he's smoking. You definitely don't want anything like that. You don't want to post cannabis related or use cannabis related hashtags. Those are always fun. They look like they capture a lot of attention, and they may, but it will be a lot of negative attention. The algorithm will read that as activity in the cannabis realm and in the legal realm, and you may be shadow banned. And so I will quickly cover what a shadow ban is. It's different than having your account shut down, but can be equally as damning. A shadow ban happens when you no longer appear in searches. So you used hashtag buy weed here or hashtag weed porn. That one's gone around for a very long time. It's a very dangerous hashtag. You will no longer be visible, not only in those hashtags, but other hashtags. Say you have one, your ABC store, and you're like hashtag ABC. You won't be visible in your own. That is when you are shadow banned and no one sees your content and your engagement plummets. And if you're a newer account, you may have trouble recovering from one of those shadow bans. So be careful with hashtags. Posting pictures of your product is also a risk. You may be enticed. You just got a full shelf of a great product. You want everyone to know you have it, but you want to encourage people to come in and maybe talk to one of your advisors and resist posting pictures of that product. And remember, too much activity can get your account flagged. And by too much activity, I mean too much posting, too many comments coming in rapidly. And these algorithms are designed to catch bots. So if you're doing things like buying content, buying comments, buying likes, buying followers, that activity can be deemed very rapid and a lot too fast for the algorithm, and they will just shut your account down. That's where you'll start to see things like you log in and all of your content's gone. So you definitely want to avoid activities like that and keep an eye on your comments, because your consumers, your followers, your patients, they can be posting rapidly, posting hashtags that are not compliant, posting things about I bought that here, and those things can get you in trouble. So here's some depictions of what's good and what's bad out there. On the left, we see a dispensary, excuse me, that has decided to go ahead and post their price range and pictures of the product and the store shelves. This is just all the way. While it's a pretty picture, we in the cannabis space, we love to see our flower product. It's beautiful, but absolutely not within compliance. They're directing people to come down to the dispensary, buy. They're using hashtags that are designed to get you flagged. You want to do something more like what we see on the right here. Although they've used dispensary, in the for the picture of the sign, that sign you can tell is a permanent structure. Stop by today and chat with one of our knowledgeable bud tenders. Learn more about our products and how they fit into your lifestyle. Very vague content. Buy local for the hashtag. Support small business, lifestyle, education, all things that people search on a regular basis. It's okay for them to find your content under these hashtags so you can shy away from the weed, smoke pots, and buy weed here. Those will definitely get you in trouble. So you want to keep your followers. You want to grow your presence. So post with caution. Like I said before, moderate user comments. Go into the comments, have someone help you with that, but make sure you're keeping your followers and who are your consumers on the straight and narrow. Have them help you protect your business license. Have a backup account. Those are so helpful if you do get a ban. And while you're you can try to ask for your account back. While you're doing that, you can still put out content that's compliant through a backup account. Encourage your followers to join mailing lists and loyalty programs, your newsletter and things like that. If you get entirely shut down on social media platforms, you want to have a way of still reaching your clients. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I do apologize for the technical difficulties. I've had a great time speaking with you all.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. You know, we all run into it in this Zoom world that we find ourselves in, and I appreciate you just, you know, rolling with it. And we got a lot of really awesome information tonight. And we have a whole slew of questions from folks. You know, I'm definitely seeing a lot of questions around social media. So maybe you and I will have a bit more of a discussion around that if there's time. I think you and I both know that a lot of new businesses are really sort of perplexed at all these different rules amongst the different platforms. But let's go ahead and start from the beginning of tonight's information. And with the questions that we have, our first question was from Darwin, and they asked, where can I get my brand trademarked?
Ooh, that's the spice. Trademarking your brand. You definitely want to make sure that you are seeking legal guidance. And I know that that's difficult in the beginning when you're starting. So you can reach out to, and someone can slap my hand if I'm not allowed to say.
We definitely don't recommend any specific purveyors of any services this evening. But I think that seeking legal guidance makes a lot of sense.
It really does.
Yeah, there are specific types of attorneys, right, who actually focus on trademarking brands, and it's in the vein of what's called intellectual property.
Right, and I will say this: you can do a mass search on the internet for those types of attorneys that take care of that. You want to be looking into intellectual property. You'll hear that called IP, and find someone who can definitely guide you to filling out the proper paperwork to get that process started. It's a great question.
Awesome. I thought so as well. Next up, we got a few questions from Kenneth. The first one is, are influencer collaborators required to publish their license number?
Influencers, I'm taking it that what I'm interpreting from that question is like a social media influencer or a product influencer. You would only need to post your license if you sell or manufacture or cultivate cannabis products. If you're an influencer and this is your job, that you go and help branding and marketing for companies, there is no license that you would need to post.
Yes. Okay, great. The next question from Kenneth is, what contests or giveaways are operators allowed to run?
Contests or giveaways, ones that do not include cannabis products. So if you are running some sort of contest, and I would shy away from it. Now, contest is kind of a loose term, depends on what type of contest. Is this in regards to a sale? Do they have to purchase something in order to be a part of this contest? Because if they do, I'd shy away from putting any marketing or advertising dollars towards that. That could be deemed unlawful.
Okay, could you give an example of what might be, if there is even one, of a contest or giveaway that an operator could run? Let's try to give.
Absolutely. Let's just say you have an eighth, and then you also have a t-shirt. But in order to be in the contest to win that t-shirt, you must purchase that eighth as your entry. That would be unlawful.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, Hey Ree, and I hope I got that name correctly, asked, instead of giving free products, can you use products as a way to pay for services, such as for brand ambassadors?
No, no. You do not want to take your product and be giving it away. And the sentence stops there. You're giving it away to the homeless, giving it away to an ambassador, giving it away to someone that you trust. You just don't want to give it away. That challenges your licensure. It's not compliant.
Absolutely. And I think, this is something that's really interesting in the cannabis space, right? Most other businesses, as a way of developing velocity around their brand, especially if they're obviously a new company, would want to have folks try out their products. So in lieu of this, because we know that there is no way that it is lawful to actually provide cannabis for free to anyone, what are some ideas that you might have, Tiffany, for these folks on really good ways to get people aware of your products or your brand as a cannabis business?
Absolutely. So as a cannabis retailer, I would say it is always encouraging to the brands that you carry to have them come in store with an ambassador to talk about the product, to encourage people to know more about where they come from. People are so invested in the story of brands and the whys of brands. It's always nice as a store, as a retail establishment, to say, come have your people come in and talk about this brand, not just to my staff, but to the consumers, and be engaging. That is a wonderful way for your store or for your personal brand. Get out there. Face to face is one of your best ways of letting people know who you are and what you're about. If there's a trade show or rally, anything like that, let people see what you're about. That speaks more volumes than you holding your product in your hand, is for the consumers to know who you are. We have to remember this is an industry that comes from a community, like I said earlier, and that community was transparent when it came to what we had and where we were going. So being out there and using your voice and standing for something really means a lot and goes a long way with your consumer knowing who you are.
Absolutely. And I think, could you speak maybe to a couple of the different businesses within the cannabis supply chain around, getting your voice out there? For example, a lot of cultivators don't have the ability to have direct contact with consumers. Can you give us some thoughts on that, Tiffany?
Absolutely. And depending on where you are or your circumstances could be a little different. If you're a grower, why not do a small tour of a small section of a grow? Or if you are one, maybe you don't go out a lot, and sometimes that's the way things are. Maybe you just do a small series, maybe a series of Facebook or Instagram lives that say, this is what it's like a day in the life of me. This is what I do, and this is why I do it. I think for manufacturers, it's the same thing. If you can't get out to the people, bring people to you, show them what you're about, show them how sustainable you are. Maybe they didn't even know that. Maybe you're doing a small practice that is just shortening your carbon footprint, and show that off. Let people know, because it means something to them. Make sure you're where they are. What do your consumers like? What are they focusing on when they're not coming in and buying your weed? What are they doing? Then be there and show them that you're a part of their world too.
I love that. That's great. All right, let's dive back into some questions. Kenneth asked, are branded stickers allowed?
Yes, you can always have stickers. And it's, again, this is a great way to, hand that to just about anyone, but follow those guidelines. Don't make it attractive to children. And make sure that if you're out just walking around giving away stickers, that you have done your due diligence to know you're giving it to a person who's 21 years of age or older.
Absolutely. Where, what do you think are a good place to put branded stickers? Like, where do you think that can actually promote a new brand sort of permeation into the market? Like, where's a good place to put stickers or other items of that nature?
Yeah, stickers and swag items like that. It's wonderful if you can be face-to-face, trade shows, farmers markets, things like that, things that aren't even really cannabis related, because remember, a sticker is not a cannabis product. So if there aren't any societal issues with you handing out a sticker to an individual at a farmer's market held in a park, then do so. Engage with people, because again, there is no set demographic that is going to be your cannabis consumer. All walks of life, you never know. Or they may know someone. So don't shy away from things like that. Definitely going around to your local smoke and vape shops. People forget those are our allies in the cannabis space oftentimes. So asking, can I leave a few stickers here for you to give to your patrons? And that's perfectly fine to do, and can open up a new door of customers for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is a market that's really interesting that sometimes doesn't come to the forefront of conversation in the cannabis world, that we have these smoke shops and they have many different names, but they have actually been a public facing side of the consumption of cannabis for decades. And because they weren't actually dispensing cannabis, they weren't subject to the same rules and regulations. And a lot of folks have a lot of attachment to these smoke shops that they go to, and they are a really great place to sort of cross brand and find, your market, right? So I think that's an awesome recommendation. Up next, Brenda asks, how big of a sign can you have? I'm going to answer that for you, Tiffany, only because every single city and municipality is going to have different rules. So Brenda, it's 30 square inches. But Tiffany, I think this would be a great moment for you to speak a bit about what makes a strong sign. We know that there are these rules saying what you cannot do. Why don't you speak a little bit about what you think a great frontage sign does look like for a cannabis business?
Sure. I think that a good sign really it captures not just your logo, but your identity. So there are products out there that when we see a sign and we see the colors, we see the shape, but we see another word, we go, oh, that looks like fill in the blank. You want your signage to have that same feel. When people drive by, they just need to take a glance and they know that's Bob's ABC shop, because they identify it by the logo, the positions of the fonts and lines, and the colors. So make sure you're doing yourself a good service, that your colors reflect who you are and who your consumer is, and that your logo is big enough and not busy so that your message gets clearly across to the eye of the consumer as they pass your shop. Make them come in with that sign.
Great. And on our next webinar on branding and marketing, we're going to spend a lot more time with Tiffany discussing some of these branding elements and how to capture them. All right, next question is from Megan. Are testing labs allowed to do offers such as BOGO, buy one, get one? So I'm assuming that's a testing lab for cannabis biomass.
Right. No buy one, get ones in any aspect of cannabis. You definitely want to shy away from giving anything away for free or having anything that resembles a giveaway.
Absolutely. And testing labs, I thought that was a great question. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a part of the cannabis supply chain and licensure that we oftentimes don't think about when we think about the world of cannabis. And so obviously a testing lab would have really different marketing. You want to talk about that for a minute, because they're obviously not marketing to the general public.
Exactly. So a testing lab's marketing would be that business to business. So directly to your retailer, directly to your, relationships with retailers, but directly to manufacturers and growers. So you want to make sure that you are conveying that you are trustworthy, knowledgeable, accurate. There's a lot of controversy that has been over the last several years in regards to accuracy. So if you can prove your accuracy, have your stats ready and make sure that you're talking about that in your marketing and advertising campaigns. It is going to be different than talking to consumers because you're going to be talking to people who know what they want, they know what they need, and they're in seeking someone to provide that. And you want to make sure that you're filling in that gap for them.
Absolutely. Great response. Okay, our next question is from Scotland. Do online marketing companies like Weedmaps require a license or to be affiliated with a license?
Sticky question. Require a license? I'm going to say yes. And then I'll also say there's a portion of that says no. It is within your best interest if you are going to advertise your product or retail establishment on a large scale marketplace, such as the one you've mentioned, or the others that exist, that you have a license, because they might not have caught you before, but they are going to catch you. And by they, I mean the Bureau of Cannabis. All advertising and marketing needs to have licensure attached.
Absolutely. And I think Scotland might have also been asking, and sometimes these questions are subject to interpretation. Mm-hmm. Maybe I think that they might have been wondering, does Weedmaps have a license? An actual cannabis business license?
I honestly don't know if Weedmaps has a cannabis license. I would err on the side, my personal judgment of that is that they do not have a license because they are not actively selling cannabis. They're selling information and advertising. So they don't need a cannabis license to do that.
Yeah.
At all. So, I do think that that they should focus on the licensure for the people who advertise with them.
And I think, it's a really interesting question because it's sort of opening up, these areas where we see that cannabis business licensure has a lot of these strict rules and regulations around how we track cannabis from seed to sale. But there's all these ancillary businesses, right? So Weedmaps would be considered an ancillary business of the cannabis space that are, operating and navigating these interesting regulations, alongside cannabis operators. And so, Scotland, that's a great question. Love for you to maybe go ahead and ask Weedmaps that and get back to us on the next webinar. I think that would be a fun thought exercise.
Yes.
Our next question is from Rayford. Being in a new location near a large residential neighborhood, how do these signs and listings pertain to that neighborhood? So if I'm going to provide maybe some additional thoughts, perhaps Rayford is wondering, you did note that in terms of how you're branding or looking at the presence of your company in a locality, you may be able to reference, some sort of notable areas or attractions within that area. But other than that, what sort of thoughts do you have? Again, the question is, being in a new location near a large residential neighborhood, how do these signs and listings pertain to that neighborhood?
So you want to survey the services of the neighborhood. In larger neighborhoods, sometimes small, there's community centers for children or playgrounds and things like that. You want to make sure that you know the proximity between that playground source and your business. Be mindful of where children gather, bus stops, schools, things like that. So I would just say making sure that you know the landscape is essential to knowing where you get to put your flyers, marketing campaigns, signs. When it comes to the signage for your building, abide by your city and state, abide by those laws, putting it one sign per frontage and having your outside sign be on a permanent structure. If you're following those guidelines and you're allowed to open in that location, then you're in far enough proximity with your business physically to be in compliance. Now, if you're going out and putting out flyers and trying to do advertising outreach, then survey your area and make sure that you're not near community services for children or treatment facilities.
Great. And, within this, webinar tonight, we have discussed all the specific rules and regulations for Los Angeles. And oftentimes it's best to just keep on referring back to these rules and procedures that LA has offered, because it's going to be really clear and help outline how you're going to set up things like your signs. Okay, next question. I really hope I'm saying this name correctly. Atingwe, is texting allowed or is it considered social media?
Texting is, in those text blasts is what I'm thinking. That may be being
yes, that's what I would think as well.
I would say that is something you really need to be careful with. With a text blast, you need to make sure that you're communicating with someone who's 21 years of age or older, which means that buying lists and obtaining third-party information to get these consumer lists would be no. That would be something you wouldn't want to do, because you haven't been able to verify that this communication is going to someone who is 21 years of age or older. Are there companies out there doing it? Of course there are, but there's a lot of companies out there that are not within compliance. As a new licensee, you want to definitely make sure you're walking the straight and narrow and shying away from platforms and programs that put you in the gray area. And text blast is one when you have not verified everyone. Now, if you want to push out your newsletter to people who shop with you and have been verified, and you have a record of that verification, which you should, then by all means do so. Direct them to your newsletter that can direct them to a landing page or your website that shows your menu.
Great. And I think that's a really great strategy to come into compliance with this 71.6% rule, right? So again, that rule is that you have to know that 71.6% of your audience meets the minimum age thresholds for the consumption of cannabis. And so I think that using the customer base who've already come into your store, that's a really great way to do that. And so if you were to need to provide proof of your advertising to these folks, you would have verification of their ages from their IDs, right, at their check-in, if you are, of course, selling cannabis products. All right, next question. Lavon, can you pass out flyers as a form of advertising?
You can. Again, you need to, it's a form of communication, hand to hand, face to face. You need to make sure you're dealing with a person who is an adult, and you need to make sure that where you're standing, where you are giving out your information in the form of advertising, is in compliance of not being near, you got 1,000 feet that you need to cover for being away from a school, play yards, libraries, treatment centers, and things like that.
Great. All right, next question from Stephen. Can I lose my license? So I'm assuming their cannabis business operating license for posting pictures that violate social media terms and conditions.
Loss of licensure, and that is state to state. Okay, so in the state of California, you may not lose your license, but you might get yourself an audit.
Yeah.
And if you're audited and there's, say, something else that you haven't done right, maybe it's a metric audit and maybe you have been making mistakes or something like that. Nothing against you. This is just a hypothetical. Then yeah, your license can be challenged and fined and or lost if you are caught doing things that are public and not in compliance, like posting about selling your product.
Absolutely. So I think, what's interesting about this question is that we have this layer of the rules and regulations of the social media platforms, and then we have the rules and regulations from the state of California and the city of Los Angeles. And so the ways that those intersect, I think, probably are a bit complex. But what I'm hearing from you is that following, the rules and procedures of the social media platforms is still probably the best practice, not only to not get your account shut down, but to also continue to stay in compliance with the city of LA and state of California's rules around advertising. Would that be a fair summation?
Yep, agreed.
Great. Okay, up next from two folks. I don't know how two folks asked the question at the same time, but maybe they were very similar. Fonda and Lavon asked, in regards to not posting pictures of product Does this apply to cultivators as well?
It can, because it shows that you're trying to the algorithm reads it as you're trying to facilitate a sale. So I understand, maybe showing that, this is my grow, this is what I do. And it's sticky. There is no 100% when it comes to social media. The rules are changing every day, and there's petitions out there to allow us to be able to post more about our products and services freely on social media because of all the changes we've had in society and in business, state to state. Why are we not allowed? So as these rules and regulations change, what we can do changes. But right now, it's hard to really dial in what's truly compliant. What rule are you breaking because you posted your grow? It seems more educational than it is anything else. I would say if you were going to try something like that, if you just wanted to try something like that, that you take the educational standpoint. Mm-hmm. This is not being shown to sell. This is being shown to show you stages of growth for education. And that might put you in an arena of being more compliant. But you have to be careful because it is still an illicit substance being publicly shown. That is the way it's read and the way that it's thought about for social media.
Great. All right. Up next from Sarah, can you offer your products for a penny instead of being free?
That is a sticky one for Metrc, having to account for that. I would just say that is an incredibly gray space. I know that many companies do that. Buy this one and then buy this one for a penny. It's just like having a giveaway because you're below the market value. You're below the value of what you of margin of cost that you brought it in for. It's a dangerous zone. I would avoid it.
Absolutely. And so for those folks that are just joining us tonight, maybe we should note what Metrc is, just because we're talking about branding and marketing, and Metrc is not necessarily a tool or a function of branding and marketing. So let's go ahead and just pause for a moment and make sure we all understand what Metrc is. If you want to discuss
for sure. When we say Metrc, what we're talking about is a brand of track and trace, seed to sale. So what that does is it tracks the plant from the seed of grow to processing, packaging, and distribution, and ultimately consumer. So there's the state of California can see the life of any given seed all the way through to the consumer's hands. So it's a track and trace method, of software method.
Great. And so when we're talking about selling or offering a product and we're selling it for a penny, any sort of transfer of cannabis material in the Metrc system, which again is a seed to sale tracking system used by the state of California as well as the city of Los Angeles, then you're going to, there's not necessarily prices in there, but we are noting that cannabis material is being transferred from, say, my license theoretically as a retailer of cannabis to a consumer, right? And so I think that what you're discussing here in terms of offering products for a penny versus free, you're still needing to record all of this in Metrc. And so there's ways that that's going to translate to other systems. You also need to make sure you're looking at use tax as well. And so what would be your best practice? What would be your best advice right now, Tiffany? Because you did say that some folks are doing this, but it's a gray area. What's our sort of position on these gray areas for these new operators in the social equity program?
Best practice, do not engage in activities that are gray.
Yeah.
Because it just puts you in line for making mistakes that you cannot recover from when or if audited by the Department of Cannabis. Protect your license at all cost.
Absolutely. All right, great. Next question is from Kenneth. If a retail storefront with a license contracts a social media influencer for a post, is the influencer required to include the license number of that retailer they were paid to do the post for?
Absolutely. They are your advertising. An influencer is your advertising. So if they're going to be talking about your brand and your brand has a cannabis license, then that needs to be referenced in any materials that they post.
How common are you seeing the use of influencers, including license numbers, and how effective of an advertising strategy do you feel like this is?
It has its ups and downs. I'm seeing that influencer marketing, what it used to be 10 years ago, is not what it is today. As there are more formats of education for becoming an influencer, you're seeing a more of a rudimentary approach to being an influencer. And we're seeing a lot of mistakes on social media, not including that license, when for sure you have been hired to do 5 posts this week for ABC brand, but we don't see ABC brand's license anywhere in your posts. That's kind of a problem. So that's what I mean by it's a little bit more rudimentary. We're not following and ticking all the boxes on the checklist when using our influencers, and our influencers don't know to ask.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we got another great question from Hey Ree. What are some ways to implement loyalty programs for customers? And can points be collected and then used towards purchase of products at a big discount?
In your store, you are free to discount your items as you see necessary. Discounting to zero, down to $0 is a problem. That is a giveaway, obviously. So don't try to shirk the rules. But loyalty programs are wonderful. And there's a multitude of ways you can go about this. You can do stamp cards, and you can, to track how often a person purchases something. Give away a soft good. Do something that you would normally maybe sell, like that's not a cannabis product, a t-shirt, a lanyard, something like that. Give them access to more information. Maybe in your newsletter, you have insiders only, something like that, something that makes it more exclusive. They get to know about product drops before everybody else, something that makes them feel like there's a level of exclusivity when dealing with them is a wonderful way to capture loyalty. And it gives you more information about them that is usable, like email address, home address, telephone numbers, social media handles. There's a lot of room there for you to really be creative and get your people to follow you almost everywhere.
Absolutely. I think that finding that creativity, I think that is, the margin that we're all looking for in advertising or marketing in the cannabis space. Like, how do you find the compliant area where you can really push your brand, do it in a fashion that reaches people? And I think creativity is going to be key to that.
Yeah.
You've been in the cannabis industry for a long time, Tiffany, obviously 30 years.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the role of creativity now and moving forward for these new cannabis operators?
Absolutely. There's just, when you are trying to think of ways to entice clients in a unique sense, because this plant, we're all out there doing the same thing. We're dealing with the same plant. So what makes them come to you? What makes them come back? Why are they loyal? Focusing on the products and services of your establishment is one way, but dive in a little deeper. What do you stand for? Go back to your why message and why you're in business and why you want this consumer, and share that with your consumers. Let them know clearly what you stand for and be where they are. If you have a large percentage of consumers or patrons to your store who are involved in advocacy, be where they are. Ask them, where there's a rally somewhere, where is it? Can I come help? Can I be a part of that? Can my team come and support you? And that is a nice and creative way to be helpful, but also let them know that you mean what you say and you mean what you stand for, because it goes far. This industry is like no other when it comes to people wanting to make a difference. Be a part of that.
I love that message. All right, back into some of the more technical questions. Ozzy asked, can I advertise on the front and back of a billboard?
In the state of California, Natalie, and because I left California a little bit ago and I'm a little rusty here, you can't do billboards anymore in California, can you? Or where are we on that?
I think that it's a little bit up to interpretation. So let's redirect our answer. I think that Ozzy, it's always important to stay on top of the updates to the rules and regulations provided by both the city of Los Angeles and the state of California. As Tiffany just noted, for a while, billboards were allowed, and then we've seen certain areas where they have been banned. And we're going to see a lot of fluctuation and movement in the rules around branding and marketing, because we're trying to make sure that we're, being conducive to business, right? Regulators are trying to make sure that as operators, you have success in the marketplace. But they also need to ensure public safety. And so this is going to require a bit of a back and forth, right? And I think branding and marketing is where we see this play out a lot right now in the industry. So happy to also look more into that, and please pop that question back in next time. And we will, in our next branding and marketing webinar, we'll be sure to have the correct answer from LA for you. All right, next up. Kenneth asked, who's responsible if a sticker is found within a playground? And I think I'm just going to take this one real quick, Tiffany, because I think it's a follow-up to my response to Ozzy of the regulators are not there trying to make this impossible. Obviously, if a sticker ends up on a playground and you didn't intend to do that, then you didn't intend to do that. And so we're all just here to do our best, right, with these rules and regulations. And so, I think that you just need to be aware of the fact that if you are directly advertising to children, then as Tiffany said, your license, is in jeopardy, right? Or even indirectly advertising to children, then of course you might open yourself up for an audit. So do the best that you can. All right, next question from Joey. Is it possible to have a kiosk near your delivery address location? Is it possible to put up signage on the kiosk?
It is possible to have a kiosk. Because I know that in California, there's a couple of brands doing that. Businesses, delivery services doing that right now. You have to be careful with your signage. You are allowed to brand your kiosk, but placing advertisements nearby, you still need to abide by the guidelines of knowing and surveying the area. And your business, which is the kiosk, is stationary and it's compliant where it is, but maybe if you took advertising flyers out too far, you have infringed upon the 1,000-foot rule that puts you too near an organization that deals with children or a library or a treatment center. So I think that you just have to really survey the area.
Absolutely. All right, next question is a good one from Teresa. How do companies give out samples to staff in retail stores? So I know that Metric has a pathway for this, but I'll let Tiffany take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, Metric does have a pathway for this. When you manifest, when you have distribution coming to your store with product, you need to specify that these are either educational samples or product samples, and how many of them per staff, and that just needs to be noted in your track and trace. But you can have samples manifested to the store from distribution for your employees.
Great. And I think, this is an interesting question because we've spent tonight in this webinar discussing how you absolutely cannot ever give away cannabis for free. But here's an example of a nuance. Right. And, Tiffany, I'm sure you remember, like I do, when the Adult Use of Cannabis Act passed in California, and when all of these rules were getting put into place, at first, no one was even allowed to give samples out to their staff. And obviously this presented a huge barrier for cannabis operators to be successful. So this is another example of how rules can change through, basically businesses being advocates for themselves and advocating for sound policy and making sure, again, that we're just promoting the interests of public safety in that process. Absolutely. All right, next question is from Victoria. Sorry, one second here. Vineyards have tasting rooms. So can cannabis dispensaries have tasting parties?
Short answer, no. On-site consumption is not allowable for your retail license.
Absolutely.
And that is a consumption lounge type of activity. And No, not with your retail license.
And so consumption lounges are definitely a hot topic, and that requires, different licensure. Any thoughts for, how a consumption lounge might tie into a retail establishment down the road from a branding and marketing perspective only?
Absolutely. It's a branding and marketing dream. I love all the talk, and I've been trying to stay active in consumption lounges across the country, because if you are able to capture both licenses and have an establishment next door, attached or nearby, that you can provide the menu for tasting or consumption for, you are cross promoting your business and all the brands inside of it directly to consumers. They're trying it, and it's a creative approach to marketing, and you don't have to do much. So I think it is a wonderful, I love the idea and the aspect of consumption lounges. I'm waiting for it to just completely be something where, yes, we can have this, state to state. Yes, we can do this, because I think we're going to see a real uptick in creativity and an uptick in branding and marketing efforts, which just means, more money in the pocket.
Great.
We're trying out there.
Great. So I just want to pause for a moment and let you know, Tiffany, we've had an amazing amount of questions come in, which I was absolutely expecting. So we're coming in on the last 5 minutes or so of Q&A, and I'm going to do my very best to get to everyone's questions. And so if your questions are not answered tonight, we're going to provide some pathways for you to get in contact with us. Tiffany, at your earliest convenience, if you could drop in your preferred way of contact for folks, that would be great into the chat. But we're going to keep on trucking through these questions in our last 5 minutes. With edibles, are you allowed to do non-cannabis tastings? Meaning, can you provide samples of edible products that don't have any cannabis in them at a retail store?
You can. You can offer those, but just be careful. Do not do not accept samples that are not filled with, or not infused. Let me get my words right. Do not accept samples that are not infused in branded packaging.
Okay.
It really needs to be in a Ziploc bag. Just looks like lunch. It doesn't, look like if they want to show you what it looks like, they can show it to you. But when they hand you a sample of a non-infused goodie, that needs to be in plain packaging. Mm-hmm. So that is a way of staying compliant.
Great answer. And I've always seen it done, especially at trade shows. All right. Up next, Daniel asks, can you use QR codes to link to your menu or website on advertisements?
I would say no, do not do that. That is shaky ground, because you do not know whose phone is clicking. You have not verified that person is 21 years of age or older, or if they're a child. You don't know. Great.
All right. Can retail stores, this was asked by Teresa, can retail stores give out free cash to customers if they have, for example, a costume contest?
So a cash giveaway.
Yes, nothing to do with a cannabis giveaway, a cannabis product giveaway, but I guess we're talking about cold hard cash.
You're talking about cold hard cash, but you're still talking about a giveaway on the premises of your store that is a licensed cannabis facility. You will not want to give away anything.
Smart. I think that's smart. Absolutely. All right. Tony asks, can I advertise name brands on the outside of the building or on the building? So my guess is Tony's wondering if, hey, I've got a retail dispensary. Can I have stickers or something for other cannabis brands on my windows?
You really can't advertise your products on your windows. It is best to comply with the state and local guidelines that say you may have your one sign on your frontage. And that sign can have your contact information, your hours of operation, and things like that, but no advertising.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. I also think it's nice to have a clean look to the front of your retail store, right?
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Can you use a cannabis leaf on your building signage with your logo? So I'm assuming your frontage sign, are you allowed to have a cannabis leaf in addition to your logo on your one frontage sign allowance?
That again is also something sticky. Your logo, sure, if your logo is approved and includes a cannabis leaf, but I would not put on your permanent sign a cannabis leaf and your logo.
Great. All right. And then one last question from Levon, and then I'm going to start wrapping up this amazing Q&A session. Levon asks, can other social media account holders advertise your product?
So from that, I'm hearing, can you use another account? So, you know, it's your account, ABC Dispensary, but use Sally's account to advert. She's advertising for you.
That would be my guess as well.
So as long as it's outreach about education and advocacy and what you stand for, but not your products, because the guidelines for Sally would be the same for ABC.
Great. That makes total sense. Well, Tiffany, this was awesome. And as I suspected, branding and marketing sure incites a lot of interest and questions on the part of, participants right now in this program in Los Angeles. You want to give me one or two quick thoughts around branding and marketing, especially for these social equity applicants before I close out with our closing remarks?
Absolutely. First, would like to thank everyone for their time this evening. It's been wonderful. And I think that it would be great for everyone to remember as you're starting out with your business, especially for your branding portion, please examine your why message and your why statements and make sure that it's reflected in your brand. It is your best method at cultivating a target segment of society. You really want to make sure that your message is translated very well through your brand, more than just your logo.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. We're really looking forward to having you back. So thank you for joining the Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation Social Equity Program on Branding and Marketing as part of the Business Licensing and Compliance Division. Part 2 of Cannabis Branding and Marketing with the illustrious Tiffany Watkins will be on 10/28, so right before Halloween at 6 p.m. Please mark your calendars. You can also go to cannabis.lacity.org for more updates on all of these additional programs that are coming up in this series. Up next on 9/23, we have payroll with Stacy Bryant, the division manager of higher growth search. And following that on 9/28, we have records retention. I'll be moderating that webinar as well. And our panelist that evening will be Summer Jenkins, and she's the CEO of Capital Green Consulting, and she's a national expert in cannabis insurance and records retention. I've actually personally noticed a lot of questions concerning records over these last few weeks. So I think that this webinar on records retention is going to be a great resource for a lot of folks. Again, I want to note that I wasn't able to get to everyone's questions, and I'm so sorry. Please make sure that you hold on to those questions. You can bring them back to our next webinar with Tiffany again on 10/28. And also Tiffany is going to go ahead and pop her best contact information into the chat. It's been my absolute pleasure to be with you all this evening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much.